Well, good morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning and being a part of this conversation. We are pretty casual, so if you have questions as I'm going through, please ask some questions. If you are in the mood to hit some things and to build some things, prepare, because there will be a moment where you will be asked to do that. If you're not in the mood for that, totally fine, you don't have to. And also, we'll have some time for Q&A at the end, so if you have any questions, you can leave it then. I am curious, how many of you have heard of Better Block? Okay, awesome. How many of you have participated in a Better Block? Oh, okay. All right, great. Okay, well, Better Block, we are an urban design nonprofit. We are actually based out of a spot on Vermont Ewing, so not too terribly far from here. But the organization did start not too far away on Tyler Street. This is our team currently. We are a very small but mighty group that works really hard with communities around the world to transform spaces. But a little history on who we are and where we started. So you all may recognize Tyler Street. This was actually the first Better Block, which was done several years ago, I think about 11 or 12 now. And our founding director, Jason Roberts, he and his neighbors walked out onto this street and they asked, what can we do to make this street a little bit better? What could we do to actually bring people together on this street? And they wanted to bring out flowers, they wanted to create spaces for neighbors to be on the street and to gather, but they quickly found that there were ordinances from the 40s prohibiting these things from happening. So the first was, it was $1,000 to add sidewalk flowers. To add street cafes, it was area times market value times 85% times 12%. And there was an ordinance from the 40s that said it was illegal for people to gather on a sidewalk. So if you want to kill street life, this is what you would do. So Jason and his friends knew of this concept called tactical urbanism, which is just the idea that the community kind of goes out and temporarily changes a space and demonstrates what's possible. So that's what they did. For one weekend, they basically just took over Tyler Street. They added a bike lane with kids paint and duct tape, knowing that if they got in trouble, they could wash it off really quickly. They brought out some seating, they brought out some lights. They had all these vacant buildings and storefronts, and they had all these neighbors who had ideas for businesses. And they said, why don't you just pop up for a weekend, and let's just see how people respond to that. Throughout all of this, they printed out those ordinances that they were breaking, and they posted them in the windows. And they invited city staff to come, and they said, we can't have this vibrant street that you see here today because we have these ordinances in the way. And they weren't sure how staff would respond, but over time, they said, you know what, you're right, and we need to change some of these things. So one of the first changes was lowering the fees for sidewalk cafes, but as you all know, a couple years ago, Tyler Street was transformed from a one-way to a two-way, which was a result of the Better Block from a few years ago. So Jason and his friends realized that there was a lot of beauty in the community members being the ones to say, not only here are the problems we see in our neighborhood, but also here are some solutions and we're going to test them out. So they open sourced this concept of the Better Block. And over the years, we have worked in places all over the US and a few places internationally as well. And really what we're trying to do is teach the young and the young at heart that they already have the tools and resources to make changes. We're kind of there just to guide the way and provide a little inspiration. So in general, the Better Block process is 120 days. And it breaks down into 4 phases where we work with the community to really reimagine a space in their neighborhood. So the first 30 days is basically just surveys and getting an understanding of what it is that the community is looking for. This is a project we did last year in Tulsa, and what we were told is that the community was really looking for a place for businesses to pop up. They wanted to have a testing ground for new businesses, for entrepreneurs, and kind of see what's possible. And as you can see, that little green space right there was the space we were working with. It looks really pretty in that picture, but it was a little dustier on the ground. The next 30 days is when we actually put together the design. So we'll take those surveys, we'll analyze it, we'll put together a block map, and then we'll put those into a 3D model. And when we're thinking about this space, a few things we have to think about. One is the budget, of course. 2 is it really reacting to what the community said they want? And then 3 is, can we work with volunteers to build this in about 3 days? So those are all the things we put into consideration as we put the design together. And then the next step is really all the planning. So my team works on all the licensing, the permitting, the insurance, all of those details. But the community brings the heart and soul with all the food, the music, the entertainment, and the things that make this unique to that neighborhood. We establish teams, people take different roles, we meet weekly, and we plan everything out. And then the last 3 days is when it all happens. So we get community members out, everybody gets to paint together, build together, and bring the space to life. And then we demonstrate. This can be 2 days, this could be a month, it could be a year, really just depends on what the community is looking for. But what we want to do is show what is possible in this space and allow people to touch it, to feel it, to experience it. We always talk about how our projects are temporary, and it's important that they're temporary because temporary erases the fear of permanency. So it allows us to test out some concepts. We were talking earlier about how when you talk about reallocating car space back to people, in many of the cities we're working in, they're very car-centric, and that is a very scary concept. But when you tell people we're just going to test it out for a couple days and just see what's possible, then people kind of open up to the idea and they can talk about and see it and actually say, okay, here's what I do or don't actually like about this. Throughout everything that we're doing, we're getting feedback from folks. So it's basically just 120 days of community engagement and feedback and letting people kind of respond when and where they are and how they would like to. And then at the end, we put together all of our lessons learned, everything we saw, everything we heard, and we report out our recommendations to city staffs, to developers, to the community, just kind of saying this is what we saw and what we heard. So we use a few tools in our work. The first is digital fabrication. We have an online library of street furniture designs that anyone, anywhere can download for free. You can cut out these designs with a CNC router, which is like a giant printer for wood. Generally, you'll find them at makerspaces, colleges, or cabinet makers tend to have them. And then you can build this furniture without any glue, screws, or nails. So community members can instantly activate sidewalks, parking lots, or just general spaces. We've also done some weird things with this. One time, the Wisconsin Cheese Board reached out to us, and they said, we have a booth at South by Southwest, and we want to host the world's largest cheese board, and we want it in a barn, but it's this weirdly spaced room, and we only have 12 hours to build it. Is that something y'all could do? And we were like, we're not sure, but we'll give it a try. So this is the night before. I think this is when they told me how many thousands of pounds of cheese they actually had, and I started to question everything. And this is what it turned into. And it was a hit at South by Southwest, probably because they were serving free cheese and wine, but I think the barn added a bit to it. And it is a Guinness World Record holder for being the world's largest cheese board. The last time I checked, I think Portland may have just beat us out, but we held the title for quite a while. So to demonstrate what Wikiblock is and how easy it is, I have a little bit of an exercise. So I need 4 people who might be willing to hit some things with some mallets and play with plywood. Is anyone willing? Yeah, all right, you two have to do it. Yeah, sorry, yeah. Anyone else want to join you? Yeah. All right, one more person. Okay, perfect. I think you two have to divide up. You can't be on the same team. Yeah. All right, so we're going to see how quickly they can build benches. So you guys get this mallet.
Thank you.
These benches are very used. They have been making the rounds in Dallas over the past 2 months. So they've been at some pop-up parks. I'm not going to tell you guys what you're building or how to build it. So you're just going to figure this out while we're talking, and we'll see who gets there fastest.
Perfect.
Sound good?
Yeah.
All right. Or we may just pause and watch them either way. It's always a fun thing if you're into puzzles and if you need to hit a few things. Normally we throw in some extra pieces, so it's a real challenge to figure out which ones actually go together. There you go.
Oh my God, there's so. That's the seat.
I know. Should I help?
I'm gonna have to help you.
I know. There you go. If you need to get up and help out, you can do that too. It's okay. So it's a lot of pressure right now.
Can you need help?
Yeah. Do you want to tell them that back piece is wrong? And maybe your back piece is wrong too.
Oh no.
Yeah. It should all fit flush. There you go. You've got the mallets too. If you go at the same time, it'll make it a little easier. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, if you hit it together. I will say this is a tricky piece, so you kind of have to hit it a little hard.
Oh, we have to hit that.
Yeah. Get it as far back as you can, and then hit it down. There you go. There you go. This is going to be interesting because we're going to have someone finish first, but they're going to be missing a piece. What? Huh? What's going on? No. Yep. Oh, man. All right, you're going to want that to be flush as much as possible. Yeah, a little bit. Hit that one down just a little more. I should have had them sign waivers. Didn't think about that. Yep, and then you're going to have to just hit it down. If you want, gravity sometimes helps if you want to tip it over and hit it. Yeah.
Pretty much
It's gonna have a little wedge, and then you just have to hit it in. So as long as you hit it as far back as you can, then just really hit it down. It'll force it together.
So close.
I know. You almost had it.
Your piece is stuck. Yeah.
All right. Well, you can go on without that piece. It'll still be stable.
Okay.
It'll still work. We'll just deduct a point. It's okay if the wood splinters a little. You can, yeah, there you go. And then you just hold that one, yeah. It's just your lap table. Here, hit this down to where it's flush, and then you'll flush, and then you'll have it. I think you guys are there. If you just hit the top of it, hit it on this joint right there. Yeah, there you go. Hit it on your joint there. There you go. Hey, all right. Sorry.
What do you got over there?
So I'll let you all decide. They finished first, but theirs is correctly built. So, you're both winners. Yeah, good job. So that's supposed to show how easy it is. You all did very well. So we build simple things like this, which is a lot of fun for people to build together. And then, of course, you can take it apart, flat pack it, and store it away. Another tool we use is our Better Block in a Box. So this is just taking a shipping container, cutting a few windows in it, adding some of our WikiBlock furniture, putting everything you need for a placemaking event, and then it can roll around to different sites. And so when the container's empty, then you can have it as a pop-up kiosk. You could have a brewery, a thrift store. More recently, it's been libraries and DJ booths, so lots of fun things you can kind of do with those. But what I really want to talk to you all this morning is about some of the lessons that we have learned from around the world that can apply here to Dallas. So the first thing And this was a really recent project we did. Bad streets are a result of bad design, not enforcement. So you've heard a lot of conversations recently about how it's all about enforcement and we need to have more enforcement on our streets. But we say that if you actually think about how you're designing those streets, you can change motorist behaviors. So last week, we were in Detroit where we tested out this concept. We were working on a lot, and that was the main point of our activation, but we were on this very fast 6-lane road with a speed limit of 35, but people were just zooming through. There was nothing there to stop them. There was no reason for them to pay attention. But as we were there, we were watching all these people trying to cross the street and trying to walk around, and it was terribly dangerous. And so we did a bit of an experiment to kind of see, could we change it with just rethinking how it was designed? And rather than me keep talking, I will talk through video.
Just something to create a tiny bit of friction. So we put some barrels there. The greatest decrease we saw was 20.7% from speeds of 52.9 to 42.4. But we still didn't have folks going speed limit. So we took it to the next level. On a very range mode, we pulled cones into the drive lane, taking it from 6-lane road down to 4. We repurposed the storage parts and turned them into a barrier. We added some cushions for seating. We pulled in some cafe sets, some flowers, a couple umbrellas, and we buffered the parkway with food trucks. As we had spent the past few days along this road, observing the speeds, we truly wondered if anyone would feel comfortable enough to actually sit and enjoy food in this spot. They did. But the real question remained, have they impacted the speeds of the road? We have. The speed limit is 35, but from 3 to 4 p.m., we had seen speeds as high as 62. The average high was 54.5. But with the park limit, we saw speeds reduced to an average of 31. That's a 43% decrease, and that's below the speed limit. So is the issue of our streets a lack of enforcement or bad design? Our experience says bad design, and this is something we can change. It's just a few cones, a couple of cafe sets, and a bit of community activation.
So we maintain that you can really rethink the way that our streets are done. A lot of ways, the reason that we wanted to change Tyler Street from a one-way to a two-way is on a one-way, as a motorist, you can just go. You don't have anything coming at you, there's no friction, there's no reason for you to really pay attention to what's going on around you. But when you switch it to a two-way, now you have this friction. Now you have someone coming at you. Cars, the lights kind of look like people. So now you're thinking, just even subconsciously, oh, people. And then you slow down, you're paying attention to not only are there pedestrians, but also are there businesses. And maybe we'd want to stop and go into one of those businesses. So when we go into projects, we're constantly thinking about the streets, the design, and are there ways that we can make them a bit safer for everyone? Oops, sorry. Another lesson we have learned is we actually have a really good special events permitting process here in Dallas. So I criticize Dallas a lot for a lot of different things, but we have gone through special event permitting in hundreds of cities, and we have seen some really good ones, and we've seen some really bad ones, and I would argue Dallas's is pretty good. An example of not so much a good one. This is a project we did in Arizona a couple years ago, and the community said, we really want to activate this park. And we thought, that's weird, that's not really something we would do. Usually parks are pretty easy to activate. Are we really needed for this? And they said, yes, we tried to do a food giveaway the other day, and we literally couldn't get a permit to do a food giveaway. Their streets are very wide in Arizona, and so we were looking at, can we kind of the same thing again, slow down the street, introduce perhaps a bike lane because people were using bikes to get to work. It was a true mode of transportation. So how can we kind of go about that? So as we started going through this planning process, we had many, many hurdles. But the first thing that happened is I called the permitting office to say, or I think the Parks Department, to tell them about this project and say, we want to do a project in your park. And the first answer I got was, we're going to start with a no, and we'll see what happens. And I was like, okay, all right. So I started taking notes. And every conversation along the way, every step, just kind of wrote it down. At the end of it, I gave that list of notes, I think it was about 11 pages, I gave it over to an illustrator, and I said, can you please depict what this felt like and what this looked like? And this is what she put together. And whenever I show this to someone, they're always like, I don't understand. Like, where do we even start? Where are we supposed to go? I just don't get this, and that's the point. It made no sense. The process was very convoluted, felt very much like this. And so we blew it up to a 4x8, put it on a piece of plywood, and we had people interact with it during the event. To the city's credit, and this was not in Dallas, this is a different city, they took this feedback. And they ended up going from 2 people to 9 people in their office. They ended up changing the interface. And I talked to a community member about a year ago, and she said, it's been kind of a 180 in the process and how we go about things. So it really, sometimes it just takes showing people what it looks like to really make some changes to make it just a little bit easier for everyone. We always talk about how it's hard to find parking in great places. The idea behind that is the places we love to go were designed for us and not for our cars. And when people start to complain that there's not enough parking, we need to add more parking to the space, then you change the very thing that killed the reason you wanted to go there. So we kind of talked about this in a project we did recently in Flint, Michigan. This was a space we were looking at. This kind of leads into downtown. There are a lot of vacant lots around this particular space, but this building is a vacant building, used to be a McDonald's giant parking lot. But what it used to be was a space that had 12 buildings on it. It was incredibly dense. And so we wanted to show kind of what that looked like. So we used a ground mural to depict what those 12 buildings used to feel like. And then we created what we call a ghost building, just using PVC pipes to kind of create the building edge so that as you walk along it, you feel like there's density, you feel like there's people there, like there's buildings, there's a space to be. And then, of course, filling it with activity and with people and all the fun stuff. And really just trying to show that if we rethink what these giant parking lots are, and if we think about density, which I know is a very scary word here in Dallas right now, but if we think about this and kind of show what this could be, then it kind of opens up people to these ideas. All right, this next one's a little bit controversial, but Dallas isn't unique. So a lot of the cities we're working in were built by, for, around, and thinking only about the car. And because of that, a lot of the issues we see are very similar. And so when people are talking to me and I try to talk about lessons learned, they're always like, oh, but we're not that place or this place, we're Dallas. And it's like, yeah, these issues are pretty universal. So one example of this is a project that we did in Toronto. Now, Toronto, I thought, is very multimodal. They've got all these great systems there. It's a great space when it comes to thinking about urbanism. Also, there's a bit of a stereotype that all Canadians are very nice. But I learned that if you take away their parking, that is not true. And in fact, it was some of the most pushback we've ever gotten. So what we did on this one was, it's a very popular street along Danforth. It is a space that a lot of cyclists use to kind of get through town, but this is also high fatality rates. And so we did a very simple 2-day demonstration where basically we extended the sidewalk, we added a parking protected bike lane, or I'm sorry, not a parking protected bike lane, we just added a buffered bike lane, and then kind of saw what could happen. We had proposed doing a parking protected bike lane, and for some reason that I don't remember, the city said we couldn't do that, so this is what we went with. We literally had a guy drive up and down in his van yelling at us the whole time. He ran into one of our planters. It was really intense, and that is the most pushback we've ever gotten. But there was one property owner there, one business owner of a bar, who was very against this bike lane, just very against it. And so I spent the whole weekend just kind of talking to him about the concept and what could be. And in the end, he was like, I'm open to the idea of this bike lane, which was huge. I just still want my parking. And so we were able to go back and say, do a parking protected bike lane. That's what the council member ended up proposing. That's what they've installed. They're still working on some of the systems and some of the ways they're getting through, but it was a way to kind of get to a compromise where everyone won a little bit by giving up just a little bit. And then another lesson learned is small acts make a big difference. So we work in these giant spaces, we do these giant builds, it's all very large. But sometimes bringing it back and doing the smaller things make a really big impact. So as you all have seen, the Dreambox couch here is a pretty simple thing that we use on our Wikiblock library, and we use it in pretty much all of our projects. Recently, we cut out a few, and we had some neighbors over, and again, some wine and cheese, and we just painted these little couches, as we call them. And then we just placed them at bus stops around our office where there were no benches. And we just set them out. And we said, let's just see what happens. We put no ownership to them. We just said, we're going to put them out here, and we're going to see what happens. 6 of the 12 have found new homes. However, it's been about 2 months, and 6 of them are still out there. In fact, I love this one because, I don't know if that zoomed in. Yeah, someone had taken this one, and they actually locked it up themselves. And they basically said, this is our bench, you're not going to take it. And it's still there. So these little tiny acts are really huge, and something, when you think about your neighborhood and your community, the little things make a huge difference for people. And I hope that you all will go out and do these small acts, and thank you so much.